Hey, second grade, welcome back from spring break. We're continuing to read The Wild Robot together. The last we left off, Roz was carrying the egg in a nest that she found on her shoulder. She had just had that terrible accident, and now she is trying to look after the goose egg. Chapter 26, The Performer. Up in a sprawling oak, the goose egg was peeping and wobbling around its nest. "Mama, Mama," said the egg. "I am not your mother," said the robot. The egg continued peeping and wobbling until nightfall, when the gosling inside settled down to sleep and the egg became quiet and still. The robot was about to settle into her own kind of sleep when she heard something in the underbrush below. Roz peered down from the branches and saw weeds rustling in the moonlight. A creature was crawling past, but the creature stayed low, hiding in the darkest shadows, so that Roz couldn't see who it was. Roz wasn't the only one watching. A pair of furry ears rose up from behind a log. The ears belonged to a very hungry badger. He laid in wait as the shadowy creature came closer and closer, and when the time was right, the badger pounced. You might expect a creature under attack to run for her life, or to defend herself, or at the very least scream. But when the badger pounced, this creature just rolled onto her back, stuck out her tongue, and died. Not only was she dead, she was rotten. The badger's face twisted with disgust. Bleh! What a stench! He pawed at the stinky corpse a few times and then gave up. "No thanks," he grumbled to himself. "I'd rather eat beetles." The badger hurried off to find a less disgusting meal. Had that mysterious creature been frightened to death? And how could her body rot so quickly? Roz was confused, and the robot came considerably more confused an hour later, when the dead creature's ears began to flicker. Her nose began to twitch, and she rolled onto her feet and went on her way as if nothing had happened. The robot's voice called from the tree. "Are you alive, or are you dead?" The creature's voice hissed from the shadows. "Who's there, and why have you been watching me?" "What you just did was unbelievable," said Roz. "I could not look away." "Unbelievable? Really?" The creature's voice seemed to be softening. "I thought perhaps I overdid it when I stuck out my tongue." "I was certain you were dead." "Oh, what a lovely thing to say." "Were you dead?" "Well, of course not. Nobody can actually come back from the dead. It was just an act." "I do not understand." "It's simple. I knew that if I played dead and really laid it on thick, that old badger would be so disgusted that he'd run off. And that's exactly what happened. We possums are natural performers, you know." "So you were a possum." Roz's computer brain quickly retrieved any information it had on possums. "You were marsupial and nocturnal, and you were known for mimicking the appearance and smell of dead animals when threatened." "It's true. Death scenes are my specialty," said the possum. "But I have a wide dramatic range, believe me." I believe you. "Have you done any acting?" said the possum. "I have not," said the robot. "Well, you should. You might enjoy it. You can start by imagining a character you'd like to be. How do they speak and move? What are their hopes and dreams? And how do others react to them? And only when you truly understand your character can you become that character." The two odd creatures sat there, one in a tree and the other in the weeds, and talked about acting. The possum went on and on about her various acting methods and her triumphant performances, and our robot absorbed every word. "And why do you pretend to be something you're not?" said the robot. "Because it's fun," said the possum, "and because it helps me survive, as you just saw. You never know when it might help you to survive too." Soon, the robot's computer brain was humming with activity. Performing could be a survival strategy. If the possum could could pretend to be dead, the robot could pretend to be alive. She could act less robotic and more natural. And if she could pretend to be friendly, she might make some friends. And they might help her live longer and better. Yes, this was an excellent plan. Roz wasted no time and spoke her next words in the friendliest voice she could muster. Madame Marsupio, it would be a great honor and absolute privilege if you would kindly inform me of your name. Roz's friendly demeanor needed some work, but it was a start. Yes, of course, said the possum. My name is Pinktail, and you are? Leaves gently shook as Roz climbed down from the tree. It was very lovely to make your acquaintance, my dear Pinktail. A moment later, the robot stepped into the moonlight. My name is Roz. Oh my, the possum gasped. You're the monster. I'm not a monster. I'm a robot. I'm harmless. Harmless? Really? Well, you do seem rather gentle. And I heard someone say that you don't eat any food at all, which makes no sense, but hopefully it means you won't eat me. I will not eat you, said the robot. I'm so glad to hear that, said the possum. And a moment later, she too stepped into the moonlight. It's nice to meet you, Roz. The weak smile appeared on Pinktail's pointy face. Roz thought things were going very well, but she didn't know what to say next, and neither did Pinktail. So the two friendly creatures just stood there together and listened to the crickets for a while. Well, I should be on my way, said Pinktail at last. Have a nice evening, Roz. Have the nicest evening, Pinktail. I shall look forward to the pleasure of encountering you again in the future. Soon, I hope. Farewell. With that awkward goodbye, Pinktail slipped back into the weeds, and Roz climbed back into the tree. Chapter 27, The Gosling. Something was happening inside the goose egg. Tap, 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 crunch. The tiny bill poked through the eggshell and peeped once and then continued crunching away. The hole grew bigger and bigger, and then, like a robot breaking from a crate, the hatchling pulled himself out into the world. He lay quietly in the nest with his eyes closed, surrounded by chips of broken shell. And when his eyes slowly winked open, the very first thing he saw was a robot looking back at him. Mama, Mama, peeked the gosling. I'm not your mother, said the robot. Mama, Mama. I'm not your mother. Food, food. The gosling was hungry. Of course he was. So using her friendliest voice, Roz said, What would you like to eat, my little darling? Food was the only response. The hatchling was far too young to be helpful. Roz needed to find a grown goose, so she scooped up the nest with the gosling inside, placed it on her flat shoulder, and marched through the forest searching for geese. Chapter 28, The Old Goose. Ordinarily, the forest animals would have run away from the monster, but they were awfully curious why she was carrying a hatchling on her shoulder. And once Roz explained the situation, the animals actually tried to help. A frog pointed Roz to the squirrel. The squirrel recommended that she speak to the magpies, and then the magpie sent them over to the beaver pond. The ground grew soggier and the grass grew taller, and soon the robot and the gosling were looking across a wide, murky pond. Dragonflies buzzed through the reeds, turtles sunned themselves on a log, a school of small fish gathered in the shadows, and there, floating in the center of the pond, was an old gray goose. A very good morning to you, the robot's friendly voice boomed over the water. I have an adorable little gosling with me. The goose just stared. I am in great need of your assistance, said Roz. Actually, the gosling is in need of your assistance. The goose didn't move. Food, peeped the gosling. Food, food. The tiny voice was more than the old goose could bear. She began gliding across the pond and squawking to the robot. What are you doing with that hungry hatchling? Where are his parents? There was a terrible accident, said Roz. It was my fault. This gosling is the only survivor. If there was a terrible accident, why does your voice sound so cheerful? The goose flapped her wings. Are you sure you didn't eat his parents? I am sure I didn't eat his parents, said Roz, returning to her normal voice. I do not eat anything, including parents. The goose squinted at the robot, and then she said, Do you know who his parents were? I do not know. Well, they must have belonged to one of the other flocks on the island, because nobody in my flock is missing. Will you take the gosling? I most certainly will not, squawked the goose. I cannot take on every orphan I see. You say this is your fault. Sorry, boys and girls. Okay, there we go. Will you take the gosling? I most certainly will not, squawked the goose. I can't take every orphan I see, and you say that this is your fault? It seems to me that it's up to you to make things right. Mama, Mama, peeped the gosling. I've tried to tell him that I'm not his mother, said the robot, but he does not understand. Well, you'll have to act like his mother if you want him to survive. There was that word again, act. Very slowly, the robot was learning to act friendly. Maybe she could learn to act motherly too. Do you want him to survive, don't you? Said the goose. Yes, I do want him to survive, said the robot, but I do not know how to act like a mother. Oh, it's nothing. You just have to provide the gosling with food and water and shelter and make him feel loved. And don't pamper him too much. Keep him away from danger. Make sure he learns to walk and talk and swim and fly and get along with others and look after himself. There's really nothing to motherhood. The robot just stared. Mama, food, said the gosling. Now would probably be a good time to feed your son, said the goose. Yes, of course, said the robot. What should I feed him? Give him some mashed up grass and a few insects get in there, all the better. Roz tore several blades of grass from the ground. She mashed them up into a ball and then dropped the ball into the nest. The gosling shook his tail feathers and chewed his very first bites of food. By the way, my name is Loudwing, said the goose. Everyone already knows your name, Roz. But what is the gosling's name? I don't know. The robot looked at her adopted son. What is your name, Gosling? He can't name himself, squawked Loudwing. And then, with the loudest burst of wing beats, the goose fluttered up from the pond and landed right next to Roz's head. Water streamed down the robot's dusty body as Loudwing leaned over the nest. Oh dear, he certainly is a tiny thing, said Loudwing. He must be a runt. I'll warn you, Roz, runts don't usually last very long, and with you for a mother, it'll take a miracle for him to survive. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. However, the gosling still deserves a name. Let's see here. His bill is an unusually bright color. It's actually quite lovely. If I were his mother, I would call him Bright Bill. But you're his mother, so it's up to you. His name will be Bright Bill, said Roz, as the goose fluttered back to the water. And we will live by this pond where he can be around other geese. I will find us a sturdy tree nearby. You will do no such thing. The goose flapped her wings. A tree is no place for a gosling. Bright Bill needs to live on the ground, like a normal goose. Loudwing sized up the robot. I suppose you two will need a rather large home. You'd better speak with Mr. Beaver. He can build anything. He's a little gruff sometimes, but if you're extra friendly, I'm sure he will help you out. If he gives you trouble, remind him that he owes me a favor. Okay, boys and girls, I'm going to start there. I apologize. We went a little bit over 10 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that we got those 2 chapters in. All right, I look forward to seeing some of your journal responses on Flipgrid, and I will see you guys again soon for some more chapters of The Wild Robot. Bye, guys.